Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with another video for honeybee stamps. So today's cards use the brand new Zen Ocean stamp set. My last video that I did for them, I used the Zen Bouquet stamp set that has been super popular. So this kind of follows along that same idea with this massive, gorgeous stamp. I just love it. The second I saw it, I'm like, I knew I wanted to play with it. So many ideas. So this time though, I decided to go a little bit simpler, I guess you would say. I was thinking about, heat embossing and watercoloring and all the fun stuff you could do with this. But the more I was looking at it, I was like, this would probably look just gorgeous embossed with metallic watercolors on dark cardstock or metallic embossing powders. So I have some navy cardstock here that I had cut the sheet in half. So it's a top folding A2 size card. And I scored it, folded it, and then I lined it up in my MISTI, and I was stamping this image with Versamark ink, so a clear sticky ink. And I had already treated the cardstock with my anti-static powder. That's what you can see, all that white residue there, just to try and minimize getting embossing powder where it's not supposed to. And for this first card, I'm using Ranger's Liquid Platinum embossing powder, which is absolutely gorgeous, especially on navy cardstock. It's so pretty. So I melted that with my heat tool. And again, my original plan was to only make 2 cards because I cut up, one sheet of cardstock. But then as I started playing, I was like, I need to keep, using other colors and just see how this all is going to look. So I did my first card with the liquid platinum, and then I'm just doing the same process over and over again. That's the nice thing about using an image like this and, a stamp positioner or a MISTI. I can just mass produce as I need to. So I did my second card front with the anti-static powder tool, inked up the stamp with Versamark, closed the lid, stamped that onto my card front. And then for my second card, I'm using Wow's Rich Gold Pale Embossing Powder. It's like the prettiest shade of gold. So sprinkling that over, I'm using different coffee filters for each color. I always pour the embossed powder over the cardstock into a coffee filter, and then I can use the coffee filter to funnel it back into the containers. And I always use different ones when I'm using different colors so that I don't, cross-contaminate my embossing powders. So melted this one with my heat tool, and I always say this when I'm doing heat embossing. It's the best part. I love when it starts to melt, just the look of it. So the second card was the Rich Gold Pale. And then for my third card, I did the exact same thing, same color cardstock, everything. But this time I'm using Nuvo's Classic Silver embossing powder. So sprinkling that all over, and then I'm going to melt that with my heat tool. And I will show comparisons between that and the liquid platinum because they're totally different. So poured that over, melted that completely with my heat tool. And as I'm doing this, I was thinking I need to dig through my stash. I could have done this all day if I'd had the time. Just done a different color and just over and over and over again because it's so pretty. So did that one. And then as my last one, I wanted to experiment. So I pulled out this Nuvo Shimmering Pearl embossing powder that I got not too long ago. And this one is a clear embossing powder with glitter in it. So a little bit different. It ends up being a little bit chunkier because of the glitter, but it still worked with this image. So stamped this onto the card, poured over this embossing powder, and then heated it with my heat tool. And it completely changes when you heat it because it becomes clear, and then the glitter. I was also thinking how gorgeous this would look if just embossed with just clear embossing powder. So you just have that glossy effect on the cardstock. And then if a person wanted to, you could totally go in and still and color this. I use metallic watercolors in a little bit, which look really pretty. I just splattered on, but you could also paint this in, with metallic watercolors, and it would be gorgeous. But I decided to keep this a little bit more simple for this set. So I did all of my heat embossing, and I had made sure to leave room on the bottom right corner of all these card fronts because I want to stamp sentiments onto all of these. So I'm going to line up the cards now in the top corner of my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment from the new Mermaid song stamp set. So same thing. I just do everything in repeating steps when I am mass producing. Do all the same thing at once and then just do it over and over again until each one is done. It just makes the process smoother and quicker and easier. So I lined up my card front in the MISTI. I held it into place with a magnet, and then I use my anti-static power tool again. I'm kind of overusing it, but I want to make sure it's not clinging to, any fingerprints or anything like that. And then I'd lined up the sentiment I chose from the new Mermaid song set, stamped that with a Versamark. And then with this one, I am embossing the sentiments with just white embossing powder, just to make it pop. It would look really pretty done in just even the same embossing powder as the image, but I wanted the sentiment to stand out a little bit more from the actual image. So again, just did this over and over again until I had all of my card fronts stamped with the sentiment and embossed. Just repeating the process. So lining it up, putting down the magnet, stamping the sentiment, pouring over the embossing powder, melting it with my heat tool. So then once my card fronts were done, I wanted to go on and finish the insides of the cards. So I'm going to line up the card on with the inside open in my MISTI here. And then I'm going to stamp another sentiment from the Mermaid song set, and decided I was going to line it up kind of more in the upper corner here because I still want to stamp the main image, but I wanted to do the sentiment first. So same thing, lined it up, used my anti-static powder tool, stamped the sentiment with the Versamark ink, embossed that with the white embossing powder, and then just repeat those steps until all 4 cards have the sentiment stamped and embossed on the insides of the cards. And I did the sentiments first because I plan on stamping the large Zen Ocean image on the inside of the card with the Versamark ink to get that tone-on-tone watermark look. And I did not want to have to fiddle with the embossing powder clinging to anything other than the sentiment, because like I said, Versamark is a clear sticky ink. It takes a longer time to dry, so it's just easier to do the sentiments first. So got the sentiments done, and then I'm going to line up the card one last time in a different section of my MISTI here, and then figure out where I want to place this large Zen Ocean image. And then I can close the lid of my MISTI, pick it up there, and then I can start stamping on the inside of the card. And with the Versamark ink, even though it's a clear sticky ink, once it's dry, it's completely dry. Like, you can write over it with a pen. You won't have a problem with that. Even though these are such dark cardstock, though, I would use a gel pen anyway because it would stand out so nicely. Especially, use a gold gel pen with the gold embossed image, use a silver gel pen with the silver one, or just use a white gel pen. Any of those would just look so nice on the insides of these cards. I love gel pens on dark cardstock. It just looks so pretty when people open the card. So once I'm done with all my stamping, I'm taking just a Swiffer cloth and rubbing it over the inside of the card and the outside of the card to remove all that anti-static powder. I also will use my hands sometimes when it gets a little tricky and it doesn't want to come off. I'll just rub my hands on the cardstock, and that helps kind of pick up that anti-static powder. So give that a little bit of elbow grease and completely remove it. With the Nuvo Shimmering Pearl Embossing Powder, I use my hands more than the cloth because the cloth kind of sticks on that glitter a little bit and you don't want little fibers everywhere. So I was a little sparing with the cloth and then just use my hands there to like rub away that excess anti-static powder. And then once I'm done that, this is where I want to add just that little bit of splatter. I couldn't resist. These would look gorgeous though to go in and like actually color in the whole area, even if you just like did it almost like a wash. But you would have to be careful with how much water you apply because this is just cardstock and not watercolor paper. But I've done other videos showing this just using these watercolors on dark cardstock, and it's so pretty. But yeah, this is the Finetec iridescent watercolors, and I chose the kind of iridescent blue color and mixed it really, really well with water. And then I'm just scraping my brush against an acrylic block here so I get a good large amount of this onto my acrylic block. And then once I think I've got enough, I'm going to pull out my splatter cubby here so that I don't get watercolor over everything. And I'm going to line up all 4 cards here, and then I'm just going to flick the edge of my paintbrush against the edge of the acrylic block and create this fun iridescent splatter. So it looks kind of just white, but then when the light catches it, you can kind of catch that like iridescent blue undertone to it. It's so pretty. And that finishes off these cards. Simple, fun, great masculine cards. I always get lots of requests for masculine cards. These would be perfect for that. So as always, I will have links below the video to the Honeybee blog, as well as to my blog and to all the supplies used. So check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for joining me today and for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all next time. Bye.